Welcome to our live board meeting. We are continuing on with our foundational document. I feel like if I say this is our last week, that'll jinx it, right? So, million more weeks to go. Let's keep going at it. All right, so if someone wants to bring it up and do that. I was talking to someone yesterday who had a tech startup, not in the tech space though, not in the game B space, and how when it failed, like they ran out of money and then it failed and they felt like they were failing each other, and we were talking about MLMs, so it was like that same energy, just what we were pulling it up. And I was really grateful for this because I'm like, right, the most we're doing is putting in an hour, we're not putting in money, and there's something nice about not having your whole life on the line. That means we can do things more powerfully because it's like a little bit tweak.
Yeah, totally.
Although Raymond's not here. Thank God to Raymond that he does this also. All right. Down to our... Do we want to go through the rest and just kind of recap what our mission, what our thing is, and then reread our proposal, iteration, resolution, or hopefully move on to the next part?
It probably wouldn't hurt to do a recap. I mean, I think we skipped last week, so it's not quite as fresh and
that too. Yeah.
In my mind. So,
right.
Signatories we've been talking about. Does sound like with what Raymond was saying, I mean, if Matushi isn't showing up, it sounds like he might become like a consultant or signatory or the other. No, as us. They're like a third option for like.
Yeah.
It wasn't consultants. It wasn't signatories. It was like people that are involved, but not like have to be there for every session or we don't hold it.
Yeah, I think they took that designation out of the second version of the document, maybe. But it's not like he's excluded. So
right. No, it's more just because like it sounds like he's got a job and won't be able to make it constantly. So if there isn't a rule around they have to make it to all the sessions, then I'm fine with keeping him there. But if we're trying to follow that rule, then
yeah, maybe we'll talk about it at the end when we're when we're doing the declaration at the end. Does it make sense to have him there, or does it make sense because he was here for the first part and he wasn't able? Because I think it was this that people were supposed to be there for, not every board meeting, but like the foundational documents themselves.
Right. Yeah,
so that people knew. But he can also watch them, which is different, and
True.
Yeah, another option is go ahead and take him off the signatories, but he could be the first person that we put on the board through the process, right? It doesn't matter. I'm sure he could watch all the videos and sign if he agrees and likes everything.
Right.
We'll play it by ear. We can leave it there for now. And
all right, for that. So if we look at the vision, a world where abundant resources are available to projects that have long-term benefits to most beings.
The mission: we facilitate shared resources for projects that have long-term benefits to most beings.
So it's just basically here's the vision, and then the mission is through us.
Yeah. Or we
help with that
by facilitating that. And then we only have one council so far, the primary council. We can always make new councils in the future. And for our first currency, we kind of agreed that everyone would just have equal shares, and there's no. I don't know if it still fits a currency after that, but that just everyone on the primary council has an equal say, regardless of time or value provided.
Totally.
Yeah, if they're on here, they have equal say. Yeah. Now we can keep the riffraff off.
Only the cool people.
Exactly. This is the table you want to be at.
The cool people council and the riffraff council.
Perfect. Mission, metric, currencies. How do we know the mission is being accomplished? Do we fill that out? Do we have a mission? Why is that there? Was it not there before?
I think that was one of the things they added in the second version. So we might need to get a clarification on.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like KPIs, right? Like just the main stats that we're trying to achieve as an organization. But it might not hurt to have Raymond's sort of input on how much that jives with the regular currencies, or if there's something else that is sort of meant to be structured as.
Yeah, I haven't ever seen a metric like that done as a currency. It certainly, it's an intriguing concept. Until then, we could just talk about the other currencies that we discussed. I think those were just kind of proposed during our last full meeting.
Like
you get a
the
currency
meeting
for,
attendance one.
yeah. Yeah, and see whether we want any others. And I guess those are just ways of having people get credit for participation.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And we talked about sort of at some point we'll have some sort of a threshold where it's like if you hit 20 of those, then we can start the conversation around, hey, should this person be a part of the council or the board?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think there's much to talk about there. I mean, I think that a lot of it is we'll end up crossing that bridge kind of probably more accurately when we actually like do it, unless there's some reason that we have to do it here. We might just want to define like what the criteria are for when we add, not necessarily like when we decide someone's ready, but just to like, here's how it works for the council adding another council member.
Yeah, and as far as other currencies, we could also have stuff like if we did have we could add all this stuff later, but if we did have a project list, then adding your project or someone else's project to the list, or maybe going in and maintaining it when a project shuts down and no one tells us and you notice it, so maybe, even stuff like posting in Facebook, and that could all go into one currency or multiple currencies. I mean, I think it's pretty loose system. We can do whatever we want. I don't know if we want to get into that level of tracking. Maybe.
So are you talking about like currencies for almost like tasks completed, like the people who are actually doing things like Carrie, for example, even if she wasn't showing up to the sessions, she still gets some sort of currency like for when she was, doing the admissions and the conversations and stuff, having something besides just attending this meeting?
Yeah. And really, we could make that all one currency, just like participation currency, and then you get certain points for meetings, or just generic. Yeah. So I think that was the intent of this other currencies session. So I just kind of want to bring up the flexibility of doing different things.
Right. I like that idea, like just a general contribution currency instead of only the one type. Where if you're doing a whole bunch of stuff but not showing up to meetings, you're still helping.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think just maybe putting a sentence or something in there like to that might be effective, because we don't want to actually do it right now. Like no one's going to go and account for the people Carrie let in. You know what I mean? Like that's just more bureaucracy. Yeah. But then in the future, we acknowledge that contribution isn't free. So having some kind of currency, is even though that's not payment, right? It's literally just that.
Do it like I'm trying to think. We'll also have it all. Go there with something like project contribution equity currency, or
I mean, I would say so. We don't even really want this meeting attendance equity currency yet, right? Or do we want to bother?
Well, I'm thinking basically we rename it where the first way to get those will be through attending meetings, because I think to Julie's point, that's one of the easier things to track. But in the future, the goal is to have that. We'll start to add things to the list as someone's tracking it, or as we get tools to do it, where we can say, oh, anybody, that's helping manage the member list gets X amount per week or per member or whatever that ends up being. But then we can tack onto it. So I think just we need to make the name more vague or more.
I would just call it participation currency, because participation could be doing tasks. It could be just attending meetings.
Right. Participation currency.
And then
just like e.g. earn one for attending a meeting.
Yeah.
Earn one for performing X task. Like you would know what you're getting, but
we'll just see. How's that?
Yep, perfect.
That works. All right, I think that's good for currency. I think currency is our hardest one, just because just because we're not really doing that. Like even the mission, it's like, we're continually showing up. This is working really well for us, but maybe not for other people. But like that's the thing with the mission that metrics was supposed to say, right? Is how do you know you're succeeding or failing at your mission? And I think with ours, since it's kind of, are we at game B yet? Well, we're getting there. It's like, are we a little bit closer than we were last month? A little bit, and you can't really quantify that. Like it's not.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we are building content that people have found some value in, by not a whole bunch. And we're providing we're managing the community. So I think we're kind of on the way there a little bit. And I mean, if we wanted to, we could get a spreadsheet and people just enter what they did and how many, and a point, and then you could make something to tell it if we wanted to gamify. Although one of the challenges with all the gamification stuff, it's kind of addicting and kind of an anti-pattern for us in the Game B community. Now, I don't know. I hate giving up on the whole gamification because I do enjoy it. So if there's a way we could do it in an unaddictive manner, I don't know. I just want to see how y'all are feeling because that's kind of in the gray area of Game B.
Yeah, I think that it's something we can. I can't. Like if you're Facebook and you gamify it, you're doing it for profit and it becomes perpetual. You're going to start doing more of it because it's getting you more profit, or because we're like our purpose is what we've said in the mission. So if it starts hurting the mission, then like as a collective, we're like, ooh, the gamification has triggered addiction in me, right? And I find myself doing what I like, acting in that way instead of acting in the best interest of me or the best interest of the group or whatever it is that I should be doing instead, right? So like there's a way to have feedback so that we are solving that as it arises. I think keeping it in mind though, not like having that as part of any currency that we're creating, right? Like, does this sound like it's good? Because we want it to spark excitement and fun. That's what it's for. But like doing that is the addiction also. So
and it
like,
needs to be able to compete with the other things that still exist that are addictive, which
and I forgot
is kind of a weird.
Since fun is one of our major things, and games are fun and games are gamified, so it does fit in. So yeah, I guess as long as it's not right, so we're saying it's just a technique and it depends on its how it's well wielded rather than an anti-pattern.
Yeah, like we're not going to give somebody, you get to be the CEO because you have 1 million points, right? Like it's not. Is it hurting the mission or is it helping the mission?
Did you ever see less people show up? Did you ever see whose line is it anyways? Mm-hmm. And so he's always like, you can get 1 billion points for that. The points don't mean anything, but and I just think that runs through my head, and the points have no value in the back of my mind whenever we're talking about this. I mean, in the future it might, but it's kind of like in that way it is kind of like likes and like things. But yeah, so I almost kind of feel like we need to put like a warning statement on it. Warning, sometimes addictive. Please. Let's review it every once in a while and make sure that we're not falling into these traps of old processes.
I think for the most point, the audience will bring it up when it becomes a problem, right? Like now people are starting to say that to Facebook. Facebook just doesn't care because they're like, yeah, money, go away.
Right.
But if we have 1 million people and they start to be like, hey, this is starting to get bad, then we can have a conversation around, okay, but it's working. Do we want to stop it if it's working and potentially lose to someone else that, isn't operating under these morals? Or do we wait to gain more ground and then have that conversation as a full community?
Yeah, I agree with that. Only sometimes you don't notice till things already get pretty bad. And, I think that's also... I can stop any time.
Which I would rather have that problem, right? Because if we don't have that problem, that means we probably weren't successful. But if we gamify it and we say, oh, whoops, we gamified it too much, now it's bad. But look, we have 10 million people. Okay, let's have a conversation about how we can tone it down. But we still got 10 million people.
Yeah. And if people are addicted to creating Game B, I'm kind of okay with them being addicted to creating Game B. But on the other side of it,
the last thing that we fix.
Yeah, exactly. No, that there's diversity. So if someone is anti-addiction, right? They're like, oh no, I know I get addicted to things and it's too much, and I feel that there isn't one size fits all for everyone, right? Like maybe some people don't want to know their grades, right? They don't want to know their points. They don't want to know that stuff, and that's fine. And other people are this is gonna be the reason they're there, possibly, right? And like, look, I have more points than you. Look at my stickers I got. Look at whatever those weird things are we collect online, right? And keeping it in mind that is it helping the mission or is it hurting? And I think it would help, but keeping in mind that different people it's going to be different for? And can we have the currency and have different groups of them, or does it need to be uniform?
Right.
Because that would make it more addictive. Sorry.
Right. A few things that I jotted down to sort of while we're talking about like possible mission metric currencies, active brand channels. Like as Bentley was saying, like if you know if we're posting on Facebook and Twitter and this and that, having sort of a metric around how many channels is TogetherTec actively posting on, right? So like how active are we? How much sort of marketing stuff are we generating? That's one possible one. There's projects involved, right? So like as we get projects signing up, if our goal is to help those projects, then one is just how many are raising their hand and saying, I want to be a part of that. That's something that we, in theory, could track more like actually concretely. And we might end up with multiple types and levels, but that's something that theoretically we could track. And then the total audience side across all of our projects, right? So if the goal is like, we want to get 1 million people involved in projects, that could be 1,000 projects with 1,000 people each, or one giant project with 1 million. But it's something that like we could theoretically track. That gets a bit harder, especially if you've got like 30 projects and you have to go and figure out what their audience size is, and it's imperfect because there could be overlap. But that's some stuff that comes to mind for like things that theoretically are trackable and seem to be in line with what we're trying to do.
So just building on that, total active participants in the community, just in general, not on the specific projects.
Like so in whatever community we say the TogetherTec community is, it's how many people are participating there. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And then I was thinking like, if we end up building resources, joint resources, how many projects are using them or how much use are they getting? So we're not just like building things and throwing them out there. It's
like some sort of like a shared tool stack ROI or something. Projects using shared resources. Yeah,
something like that. These are just ideas. We can make them better.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm not super attached to the 3 I added. They're just sort of ideas to like, I think it's more, so we have a starting point if we're going to talk to Raymond about it. Like, here are some things that we talked about. And I'm sure that some of them we'll probably get next, and then we'll try to find ways, because the hard part for a lot of these is actually quantifying it. Is, even though some of them are easier to quantify, okay, but then how and where do we track it?
I was going to say, yeah, satisfaction, right? Of like, and which is also the number of people that show up and keep showing up, right? But sometimes it's like, well, what could improve it that makes you come back, that makes you, are we happy? Are we getting enjoyment out of it? Are we?
People can like watch and attend and not like it though, right? Like it's something that they want to keep an eye on because they don't trust it or something like that. And
yeah,
that's why I'm here. I know.
So yeah,
keep an eye on you too.
Yeah, and then the satisfaction survey, I guess that's a bit like CSAT. Do you know what CSAT is?
I'm not familiar with that.
That's the like ranking usually a company from 0 to 10. It's kind of like the standard for game A surveys for like for companies, where if you give a 9 or a 10, it's good. If you give a 7 or an 8, you're neutral, and then 6 or less, you're a detractor.
So I haven't heard that called CSAT.
Sorry, NPS, not CSAT.
Net Promoter Score.
Right.
So the question is, how likely are you to tell a friend about this? And 8s and 9s and 10s counts, but you forget 7 and 8s, and everything below 7 is a -1, or you forget that. I can't remember the exact numbers, but something like that.
9 and 10 is a +1, 7 and 8 are 0, and then 6 and below are a -1. And then you compare your +1s to your -1s for the percentage, and that's your NPS score.
Yeah, I think those would be separate. I mean, they're slightly the same, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying that we would use it because the NPS, like, it was designed for businesses, but something like that. Like it was.
Yeah, it's interesting. We do kind of want to be viral for the right purposes. Growth at all cost would we're not growth at all costs or sustainable.
Right, and that will absolutely be one of our challenges, right? Is walking that line. Is it has to, in a lot of ways, operate like a game company, both from trying to get audience and trying to get money. But then it, where it has to differ is where it can't cross certain lines to do that. But it still has to be going out and seeking money. And in a lot of ways, you're like, wait, how is that game B? Well, because we have to keep lights on. Which means that we need money and audience, but we aren't going to use slave labor. We aren't going to do certain things to make that money, and the money doesn't get paid out to shareholders. It stays in the organization to help with projects, to pay staff, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe separate from mission metrics, but every once in a while, and maybe this could be a survey too. It's like, how game B are we, right? Something that kind of measures that, and to review what we're doing and say, okay, let's review this and say, was this idea game B, or is it having negative externalities?
Yeah, like that.
Unintended consequences.
I think the only thing I would change for that is, even once it's launched, still staying away from game B. I think you would have a first conversation, a conversation around, and this would sort of be like a game B translation on what are the elements of game B that you want to see here, and that sort of we'll start out with, here's what we think that we should emulate. That can change over time as we get more people. They're like, oh, I'm more interested in collaboration than this other thing. Then as we start to get an idea on here's those values, then we ask the community, how well are we emulating those? So that it's more specific. How well do you feel that we're collaborating? Whether or not you thought that was a key part of game B, we've decided that for TogetherTec it is, so that's what we should be judged on.
Mm-hmm. And for also, if there's projects that are under the TogetherTec umbrella, I don't know, are our projects under the TogetherTec umbrella that we're doing it, let's say, annually for both our individual projects and the and TogetherTec, right? Because it is, and everyone can, whether their project's under the umbrella or not, use this metric. Right. And how are you improving? How are we doing our own? And how are we doing overall with the interconnection and TogetherTec in general?
Totally. I think that's if we're saying that we're going to start tracking it for us, one of the tools that will probably end up providing to projects is, hey, here's how we set up our NPS survey, or whatever it ends up being called. And but NPS still kind of works.
Did Raymond's organization, Protocol.love, do they have a suggested tracking system for these currencies yet? Do you remember?
I don't know and/or think so.
I guess.
I don't think so. So I'm going to say I don't know. I think probably there might have been something on the blockchain, but I know he's kind of waiting for Holochain to be there, and it's not. So maybe there was something on there.
Because we could, if we wanted to start tracking these, which I don't know that I feel a need yet, but you could start it off with just a Google spreadsheet, right? And you just put your name, what you did, and how many points you think you get, and then do a summary page. So I was just wondering whether, I don't know that we need to do that yet, but
might be something we could do in the new year when we reintroduce project raising / roundtables, is having something kind of how every Thursday you post your project update. Well, posting in that is a point, right? But not posting in general is not a point, right? Is this valuable? Someone posts their project and you critique and help their project. That's worth a point, right? That setting up a conversation to have a one-on-one with somebody, deciding on what those currencies are worth, and then starting to test it and see, do people, sharing this on your Facebook might be worth a point, so that we're getting more interaction and more audience, or not. Maybe we don't want that. I don't know, but those, and we can tweak it as we go, and we're being transparent about it, right? Hey, this isn't getting enough engagement. Let's see if that helps.
Yeah. This is also, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Adrian. I wasn't ready yet.
This is starting to sound a bit like this is one of the strategies that TogetherTec uses to manage and interact with their audience. So that becomes another thing that, after we've been doing it for a little while, we come up with some sort of a write-up or a toolkit saying, hey, if you like how we manage our audience, here's all the instructions on how we do it, and possibly the tools that we use.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing about the radical transparency of this Protocol.love is that it'll do that naturally, but yeah, I think there could be a time that we get together and kind of clean it up and formalize the wrong word, but clarify.
Yeah.
And also edit out the stuff that didn't work and
totally
up to date. They do have a demo. So protocol.love links to cogov.tech, and that demo.cogov.tech, they have a prototype.
Oh, interesting.
And they also have a Patreon. They're on Patreon, so I don't know. Maybe I should start contributing to them. I have a huge list of Patreons that I don't actually read anything they do, but
yeah, I'm the same. I support people. I'm like, I haven't read their content in like 2 years.
It's like
they're not even doing anything anymore.
It's like I like what you're doing. Keep it up. I'm not going to pay attention, but
which is funny because for a lot of them, that's almost when I stopped paying attention. When I'm like, I'm supporting them, and then I get distracted and go and look at something else, and then they're still getting my money, which I'm fine with. I can stop it anytime I want.
He actually doesn't have a creator page at the moment, so I guess that's an old link.
All right, should we continue on to see if we can get through this? And
Sure.
So Ray can come to the next one.
So I think that's a pretty good start for the emission metric currencies.
I think
that one we
that.
talked about.
Assets, I think we're on assets. The brand, TogetherTec, TogetherTec.org, domain name and website, which reminds me of something. Facebook group, which of course is TogetherTec projects, GameB projects, TogetherTec. YouTube channel, one of which is I was going to put on the board meeting, like our agenda, was rebranding the project B, especially since like Jim Rutt's kind of going off of Facebook, and I think the like GameB project, like rebranding, like keeping it Project B because we want those people to be able to find us, but rebranding possibly the like
the header
picture as both TogetherTec / GameB, so it makes more sense.
Right. Yeah. Like I almost wonder if we need some sort of a tagline for TogetherTec that can evolve over time, but then it's something right like TogetherTec, a GameB collaboration, or something along those lines, so it's clear and you can see why it's there, why it's GameB. But like we're tempting to be like, hey, it's not officially GameB because kind of nothing is, but this is our attempt, and that's the vibe that we're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. Just to clarify, I think we do need a tagline, but not that. But then that would be like a disclaimer is the wrong word, but an association.
Yeah,
and
like
I don't know if we want to use like starter B or a transition B organization, right? Something like that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which is even getting even more esoteric. Yeah.
Right. Whatever it takes, just to give some sort of a fleeting, like they are related. That's why we're here. But we can probably have somewhere
also,
in the explanation.
A lot of people think TogetherTec is our project as opposed to it is the Facebook group. You know what I mean? Like, bring your project and have a say in this. And I think that makes it much more obvious that this isn't just being part of it. Like, this isn't like being part of WikiLection or like being part of Solution 19. It is something that is, you're here. Like, this is happening, it's emerging, and it's not Facebook, right? Like, it's all of that, but people don't know. And so it feels like they're like the Stoa or Rebel Wisdom or Future Thinkers, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to that even if they are GameB, as opposed to no, GameB projects is TogetherTec. It's like, do you have a project that's OmniWin, that's a GameB? Yep, you can bring it here, whether you ever give up ownership or not, right? And that's evident in our branding, right? Without having to explain that, because people who are here and watch don't get that, right? It's like, I've had people be like, well, what is TogetherTec doing? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the GameB projects is TogetherTec. Our board meetings, our stuff, it is that. Like, it's not like, where do I find this thing you're working on? It's like, you're in it.
Something where if we have that sort of tagline or whatever it ends up being, we can start to build that into some of the materials, like maybe having, a startup screen for this.
And I'm realizing I totally just sidetracked our entire conversation with my little agenda.
That's okay.
Well, that's the first time that's ever happened in the meetings, Jubilee. You should be ashamed.
I know. So proposal, initiation methodology. Proposals are initiated when at least 2 PCIC holders are present in a board meeting. Proposal iteration methodology. Proposals are iterated when at least 2 PCIC holders are present in a board meeting. Proposal resolution methodology. At least 75% of the PCIC holders must be present to come to a consensus on a resolution with no holders blocking. Upon positive resolution, all details of the initiation, the iterations are recorded along with the details of the final proposal. Details should include who initiated the proposal, the iterations, and who participated in the resolution.
Like that. One small thing, I'll just change that to maybe. They won't always be iterated.
Yeah. Or might be. Perhaps.
Projects.
When we feel like it.
Maybe. I like may better, but if you guys like might, we can.
No, I'm good with maybe.
That's good.
So maybe one word though. But
no, it's may space be. But maybe is also a word, but in this case.
I don't know the difference. Okay, let's go on. Let's not do. It'll be one of the ones I'll never be able to get the difference between. Proposal, resolution. We already did that. Yeah.
I'll be right back, but I'm listening.
Okay.
Right. Jurisdiction dispute resolution. It is time to consider how external jurisdiction assertions must be handled. So I think this is a good thing to have a conversation. This is what like our whole hour was supposed to be about.
Yeah.
How do we deal with dispute resolutions? What would we want? What would we want if we were in a
So
dispute?
I think there's a few different parts to sort of, I guess, prime the conversation. One is essentially, right, when we end up incorporating, which countries do we incorporate in? Maybe I'll put incorporation in quotes because who knows what the actual structure will end up being, but something like an incorporation. And just where that ends up being, right? And then there's going to be countries of, we'll call them the members. I guess what would this be like? Areas for dispute. Like, what are the actual things that we think might trigger a dispute? Is it going to be a membership thing? Is it going to be, they joined as a project, and like, where are the areas where we can see this actually coming into play? You think of anything else that's like sort of something to cover in the conversation?
Well, I was more, I was thinking actual dispute resolution, like Bentley said something that hurt my feelings, and now what do we do about it? You know what I mean? Like, what do we, because he does this all the time. Like how, it's hard to wait till that moment. Like, what does dispute resolution look like? Who's expected to do what? Is there a third party to go through? Is there how do we want that to look? And then, there's going to be actual court of law, jurisdiction. We're going to get sued. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. But internally, I think we do want to have something that's more about arbitration, more about, hey, if you're coming and being a part of this, you're agreeing. Here are the terms and conditions, right? Unless we do something absolutely egregious, we are going through this method and not the court of law.
Right. Yeah.
Although I think this is one of the places that this document, it's still being proposed. It's not quite finalized. It's not always clear. And I think this whole section is really just talking about external dispute resolution. I think the internal dispute resolution is like all your operation and your processes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think they meant this to be external. And I think that that's still important, how we're going to do dispute resolution.
I think the only
doesn't matter.
Time that it does come into play is when we have rules around before going to a court of law. You should try to go through some sort of internal steps.
When they say dispute resolution here, I think they meant jurisdictional dispute resolution, even though it's a slash.
That's my understanding.
His question is basically, where are you incorporating? Because it doesn't matter what else we say about dispute resolution, the international laws will apply, and what we say usually gets thrown out of court. So really what this question is what is your legal structure is really, right. I think what this section is for, and they just didn't phrase it very clearly. Which is the only reason you have legalities is for jurisdictional dispute resolution, and it varies by jurisdiction.
Which I guess to me is the issue, because we of control, because where we incorporate is absolutely within our control. That needs to, you know what I mean? But after that, right, if we have a vendor, if we have we can't control if they are going to see, you know what I mean? So there is the internal that is what I was talking about, and the external that we honestly don't have a say in anyway, from what I understand. I mean, usually vendor agreements don't come with arbitration.
Right, but you say in what country you're going to be incorporated.
Yeah.
That's really all they're asking here. They just didn't phrase it well.
Yeah.
So,
so I think that's an interesting note, because when you sign a vendor contract, generally you're signing their contract, and they will have had this conversation so that their contracts are skewed towards where they want to have the dispute.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I guess this is about, like, to Bentley's point, where we incorporate. But then the step aside from that is, where do we think this will actually come into play? Like, what sort of agreements will anybody or any company or person have with TogetherTec? Not including vendor, because that's more us having it with someone else. But like, which agreements are we going to create that people will end up signing?
Okay, that's different.
Because
what agreements?
I think that's the only time that this comes into play in my mind, because every vendor contract I've seen, it's got it in their stuff, and you can dispute it, but unless you're a big company, that they're going to tell you to go pound sand. So
I have to say, actually solving this one, that is picking a place to incorporate, and what that means, right? For tax purposes, for legality, for all of that, doing that actual research and characterizing it and deciding on it is a very important piece of all of our projects. You know what I mean? And so, like, I feel like, not that this should be on Raymond and protocol.love, but like, we can't solve that in a meeting. It's more something that's more meta, right? And more like, which one is the best if you want to do this and not this? And it's so, like, in solving it for TogetherTec, hopefully it becomes a resource for all of our projects, right? And like, here's why we decided, and having that feedback in, which.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think this is.
We can clarify all that with Raymond.
Structure and jurisdiction. Okay. Is that like a question to check with Raymond on?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be picky.
Like, we're not gonna be like, yeah, let's do it in Washington. Let's do it in Spain. We don't know enough, right? Iceland. Like, what are the reasons for one versus the other? And then, of course, we need a person or people in that place. But like, my guess is BC and Texas aren't the ones just because those where the two of us live, right? Like, that's not necessarily, or they might be. Texas is maybe is an option.
Yeah. Well, if I was incorporating, I'd still probably do it in Utah, but that's where everyone in the U.S., most everyone in the U.S. Although we would probably do a benefit corporation, and Texas has a weird benefit corporation one, so a Utah benefit corporation would probably be, if we're going to do it within the United States.
Yeah, which is also right, because I think a lot of people, that would be automatic. Why wouldn't you do it in the States? That's the only, like, the world ends at the borders, right? Whereas, like, we're already a global community. We already understand. It's like, wait, the Philippines? Like, where does it make the most sense to do it? We got someone in the community, I guarantee you. So. And
I mean, this is probably getting into being a bit too paranoid territory, but I think it's also, which countries do we feel, if this actually got traction, might bend their own rules to attack it. And that's an area where I would not want to incorporate in the US to start with, because I feel like that's one of the top lists to be like, yeah, I know we have rules that allow this, but we really don't like you, and our billionaire friends want you to go away. So it turns out you broke a law that we just came up with, and you're all in jail.
Well, I have several customers that refuse to have their data reside in any data center in the United States because the US government can go in and seize the data at any time. So that's kind of a big decision. Now, I don't know when we actually have to make that decision, because until we have like money involved, it's probably not that important. Right.
Yeah.
Although I think we keep talking about getting money involved, so maybe.
And that's something where this might be a bit weird, because I already have WikiElection incorporated. In the next while, I'm going to be changing the name of that corporation to Conferati, and that will have a bank account and all that stuff. So I'm not sure like how and when we can piggyback there, or if it's just like, an unofficial thing, like the stuff that Kiri was talking about having like an entity in countries that can, I forget the name of the organization, that sort of crowdfunding, Open Global Collective or something.
So they have fiscal sponsors.
Right. Yeah. Where I think like you just sort of like have to be a corporation that has a bank account and being okay with being that, the in-between, which if that's the first step, that's fine by me.
Yeah, which is that's a different, like that is kind of the jurisdiction's almost that, like the platform rather than you know, where you're incorporated, but we're still in gaming, so we're still incorporated. There's still people suing. There's still all that
right.
fun.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I would assume fairly soon into it, like if we actually start to get money involved and we're dealing with multiple countries, we're going to end up being incorporated in multiple countries. And
yeah,
then at that point,
I think this is part, like, we can't solve this right now, and it might be the next thing we solve, right? It might be like after we're done our foundational documents, let's figure, even if we're not incorporating right now, let's figure out a list of what do we want to know about the different places, right?
Right.
The freedom, the currency, you know, how many people need to sign? Do you need to have Utahians? I don't know. Utah.
Right.
Do you need to have Mormons on board? Let's just go with, like, that's what they're called, right? People from Utah.
In BC, that's why I chose the kind of corporation I did, was because of the limits around how many people had to sign and where they had to live and what information was going to be public.
And so I think we can probably go on to the next part, unless there's something pressing at this moment in time for this one, which is our initial team accountabilities, right? So I think this means, what am I accountable for? What are you accountable for? And personally, I'm accountable for showing up. And not even that, right? If I can't show up, we figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
yeah. I'm not sure there is anything yet, because
Yeah.
Like, show up and tell you guys if I'm not going to.
I think of this more in terms of the assets. Like, once we have that, right? Like, once we actually get serious about the website, okay, who's responsible for the website? Who does the buck stop with?
So okay, so that's actually no. Then we do, because Bentley puts up the update in Facebook on Thursdays, right? You put up the Streamyard things. I feel bad now because I don't have anything, even though I did.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are.
You bring the chair. I think we could put attending the meetings. Maybe we just say majority of the meetings or something. Because if no one shows up, it's over. But
yeah,
type would be great.
Like, when Carrie was here, she was kind of in charge of letting people in. But now I'm just, every so often, I'm like, oops, I haven't let anyone in 2 weeks. Oops, then I wonder if they still want in.
Do we want to say that you own that for now?
Sure, I can. If I'm owning it, then I might. Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
So we call this like member admission.
Like, I'm doing none of what she was doing. I'm literally just submitting them and looking at their answers and being cool. You're either a project owner or a project this. There you go. Either want a project or have a project is what I was operational.
Okay, so I think 1 second, I'm gonna check out the assets. Yeah, so brand is not really anything to do anything there. Yeah, that's kind of still vague. The website, no one really owns yet. I think Jubilee technically owns it, but as far as like actually having tasks involved, there are no tasks yet. And then the Facebook group, there's the posting and the admission, which we have people down for, and then the YouTube channel that's tied to StreamYard, which is for me. So I think that's it for initial accountabilities.
Jubilee, for that, do we want to do anything with that website right now?
I'm just literally just checking to see if it's still up, because I know I bought the domain, but yeah, and it's still up, so it still exists. It's still a WordPress site. I can't do anything with it. I wouldn't even know how to change a single thing on there besides just handing it over to someone else to do that update. Yeah, and my brain capacity is not going to be able to learn any of that.
I'm wondering. I mean, if I had my, well, okay. I don't know. Maybe we need to just go ahead and have a discussion about that. Maybe even just changing the homepage to say, hey, go to Facebook.
Yeah, no, which is totally, I just can't do it. And so whoever gets that password and does that stuff, deciding on a quick lingo, hey, not it's broken, but hey, we're not keeping this updated, but we're holding it. Here's where you can get involved and be part of it. And a little blurb that explains, you know, not my vision of TogetherTec, which is currently up there, my vision from 2 years ago, really. But our vision of like our mission and vision, here's who we are, here's what we're up to. And in fact, our foundational documents might be the perfect thing in a better format.
Yeah, and just like have links to all of our assets, basically. Here's a Facebook group, here's YouTube, here's what we're up to,
I think I tried to get access from the person that was helping you out. I don't know if we ever did that. We're going to try that again. The other option is Jubilee, if you don't want to do that, is you could give me access to whoever your domain host is, and I could just repoint it to something different.
Okay, well, yeah,
so
let's figure that out
easier.
at one point. I just need someone to sit with me and figure, like, I just have zero clue. I guess I'd have to go into my email, find my Bluehost. Like, I signed up for it at some point, or like what I need to do, like what.
Right.
Like what I would Google, transfer domain name. But that's not what I'm doing, right? I'm giving you access to the back end, which is.
With that, we can do like a screen share, or just all come over at some point, and we can.
So, and if y'all want to give me a username and password, I'd be happy if everyone's all going in and just tweaking things.
Okay.
Awesome.
But at some point, we want to decide: do we like WordPress, or the way I've been doing things recently is just with GitHub? But that may be more complicated for some people.
Depending how things go with the Conferati platform, it could end up being one of the apps there, because that's one of the things I want to build fairly soon is the project list and the stuff that we've been talking about.
That's a good point.
So this might just be like a temporary thing where we update the page, because as Julie said, it's 2 years old and it's the old vision and stuff. Just have it point. So yeah, so I guess we'll have to figure out what's going on with the hosting and the login there. And then if we can find that, send that to Bentley, and he can own the actual website content updates. And then I can help Jubilee as necessary with the domain name. And if it comes down to
the only reason it's WordPress is it was open source and the person doing it, like,
right.
It's not, I'm not, anything you want to do with it, I'm good with, basically.
It's a good, WordPress is a good default.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of the standard for the most part.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. That's good for the accountabilities, operational notes, meeting times, requirements to maintain. Okay, this seems like a pretty important thing. So I guess for now we're saying
like everything we've put in all the other sections, basically. Everything we've kind of like added a little bit here and a little bit there.
Board meetings at 12 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. I guess that's the only standing meeting for TogetherTec.
Yeah.
At the moment, yep.
I don't think we really have any requirements to maintain currency and stuff. We're just, once you have it, you have it, and we can talk about how that changes in the future based on, how life happens.
Yeah, I think that would be more for those other currencies that we haven't even decided on. So
yeah, or if I disappear all of a sudden and I haven't been here for 2 months, at some point you're like, hey, what do we do if someone hasn't been here for 2 months? When do we start talking about not having that person as, like, especially if we're talking about things like this where you can't pass a resolution unless that person, and if one of the 4 is gone, then you would always have to have 100%. That would get unwieldy fast. So you'd have a conversation around how do we change that.
Yeah.
I feel like in no way are we doing the invocation until Raymond's here. I feel like that's definitely something.
Well, I think that
probably wants to be part of
the end of it.
Witness us or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we need to ask him if because we did leave quite a few things pretty loose. Does he recommend we have to tighten that up, or maybe it's not a purpose in doing the invocation until you have some extra currencies and a legal entity.
Yeah. I mean, personally, even if it stays like, uninvoked for 6 months, I think just all the conversations that we've had to get the document to where it stands have been insanely useful.
Agreed, which is like the whole purpose. It's like, are we better? Is TogetherTec further on than before? Yes and no, but like, it's not.
It hasn't actually moved, but like we have a lot more planning done that was important, and were things that we were blockers and we disagreed on and stuff like that. So it was definitely helpful to see this, and I'm so very grateful
now
for
after we
the
move off of
updates
this
that
one.
Bentley made to this, because I like that wording a lot more than what we had.
Facilitate shared resources for projects that have long-term benefits to most beings.
I like that.
Yeah, I think we did a good job, and I enjoyed this process, the conversations.
So is there
I think so after we're done the foundational document, going back to having just an agenda, which we've said, right, having the iterations and stuff, and we're kind of doing the iteration process, right? We can say, hey, what are the things we want to know about? Do we want to know about them for every province and every state and every European country? Maybe, right? Even if we don't fill it in, maybe it's just like we know to fill in Utah, Texas, Alberta, whatever, right? Not necessarily all 50, but other people could fill it in. So it's a resource for other people for later.
Totally, yeah. And there's almost certainly going to be a bunch of articles written comparing all the states and comparing all that, so we can start to reference some of those, and then
You would hope so. But there's probably like an article on the taxes and an article on, like green whatever, and which one Iceland's a great place to have a social enterprise or whatever it happens to be. How do we actually compare them to each other without the place being like, we're the best place to incorporate?
Yeah,
of course
totally.
You are.
And it sounds like we saw
because we also like income tax, right? Like it's not just corporate tax. If we're getting incomes from it, like how does that impact it? We're not just a corporation. We do care about the bigger financial impact for our own lives, for our members' lives. What does that look like?
Yeah, and that's where it gets weird, because in my mind, the organization like doesn't break any laws, but takes full advantage of all tax loopholes available, and possibly even takes some of the money that it saves on that and spends that towards fixing tax loopholes. So like, hey, thanks for not billing us that $1 million. We're going to spend $100,000 on trying to change it so we do have to pay taxes, but so do all of our competitors.
That'd be hilarious. We're not going to make friends that way. We'll make the right friends on the project under our umbrella. Oh, I'm down with that. I'm into breaking all the friendships that aren't.
I think absolutely be one of the really weird areas with all this is all the areas where it's going to look and behave like a game company so that it can stay operational. But then it's all these lines on like, what lines do we not cross? Because that's really where things will differentiate in a meaningful way. But like, avoiding paying taxes unnecessarily, I don't really have a problem with doing that, because A, we'll be paying staff well, and B, like the whole point of it is to contribute back to the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're at a standstill on this one just because it's Radix here.
There's nothing like a time difference.
The time difference. Yeah. It's funny, I was going to warn you, because the same thing happened with Eric for solution raising, and I was like, it's been a week. Everyone knows now, right? Because now it won't be next week. Next week, we have our time change as well. I believe all of North America does it at the same time if they do it. So just for this 1 week.
Perfect.
Are you still free during this time, Radek? Like mostly moving forward?
Mostly, yes.
Awesome. I don't know if you had a new job, but I'm guessing, no, because you don't have a job. No, that 9 p.m. at night there or whatever, it's not the time you'd probably be working at. Yeah. Good old time change. Time zones. All right. I'm trying to scroll on there. Where are the ones I have on?
Let me scroll up.
So were you able to listen in at all, Radek?
Sorry?
Were you able to listen in at all, or no? Because you didn't know it was happening right now.
No, I just saw your message because I thought, okay, it's 9 p.m. time to join. And yeah.
Got it. Should we select the shared resources for projects that have long-term benefits? So do you want to scroll down to what we were doing today?
Sure. We talked a bit about the mission metric currencies, which are sort of like our KPIs, the main stats that as an organization we're trying to manage and grow or shrink depending on what kinds of stats. And these are by no means what we're actually suggesting. These were just sort of ideas that we came up with for a future conversation with Raymond around like, hey, is this the kind of thing that we're trying to go for? Or then that's right, like how many different channels is TogetherTec active on, right? We're like, maybe that's at least one post a week. Are we active on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, etc.? Just how many projects have signed up to officially sort of be a part, or like how many project owners are a part of it, however that ends up being structured. Across all the projects that are a part of TogetherTec, what's the total audience size? Right, so combining the audience of small ones and big ones, we're trying to get 1 million or whatever that stat ends up being. How many people are participating in the TogetherTec community? So sort of like this is across all projects, and this is just the TogetherTec. Like how many project owners and helpers are participating in that community? If we have shared resources that we're actually probably paying for and that projects can use, which of those paid tools are actually being used and by how many people, and then which aren't being used and could possibly be gotten rid of. Talked about different things to do with surveys, so like a satisfaction survey, or a kind of a common version of that is the Net Promoter Score survey, where like you're ranking an organization from 0 to 10. Sort of how much you like them, how much you would refer them to friends, that sort of thing. And then a talk around like probably how we frame some of the questions in the survey is we would need to decide which Game B things we're trying to actually do, right? Like, are we trying to do cooperation, collaboration, OmniWin? What are the things that the community says are the pillars of like what we value? And then we would figure out how well are we performing on those values.
Mm-hmm.
We changed the meeting attendance currency to just participation currency, where the idea is that, initially we'll just be awarding those for meeting attendance, but in the future that could be, posting on Facebook or the various kinds of participating in the community, not just showing up to the board meetings. Assets didn't change. We didn't really make any changes to the proposals.
I can't seem to update the accountabilities, but I thought of another one.
Okay, sure.
And it's not under one of the one we do have.
Oh,
it's under
okay.
YouTube, which is just I can be in charge of updating the after the StreamYards go up to put them in the right.
Oh, like the playlist stuff?
Playlist, yeah. I'm not saying I'm going to do that every week, but
Right. Yeah, no,
I'll go in. I did it a few weeks ago. Went in and reorganized it to make sure that the board meetings with board meetings and roundtables with roundtables. Too bad StreamYard doesn't give that option of like which playlist would you like it to be part of, but
right. Okay. Cool. Going back up here, we talked a bit about the jurisdiction dispute resolution section, where a lot of this was just sort of having a pre-conversation to come up with some ideas of what to talk to Raymond about. And there was, sort of some differing opinions or ideas on how this would actually be used and where it would be used. I think this sort of the final thing that we agreed on was this is to do with largely where the organization is incorporated, like what country, which laws would it be subject to, and then a conversation around how does that work with like international members and when would this actually come into play? Because as far as I know, it only comes into play when members or projects or something are signing an agreement with TogetherTec. I think that's the only time that this would actually come into play. But I'm guessing that Raymond would probably know more about that. This, right, and then the accountabilities, who's responsible for what, mostly when it comes to the assets. And so we're saying that for Facebook, Bentley has been doing the weekly project update. Jubilee is doing what Carrie used to do with the member admission, not quite to the same extent, but she's still the one that actually hitting the button to let people join the group. I'm doing the StreamYard postings. Jubilee owns the domain name, so that's her name now, but she may require some assistance there. We may even end up doing a domain transfer if that makes it easier. Bentley, once he's given the login, will be doing the website content, which for now is just going to be like a single update saying, hey, this isn't really active. You can find us here. And then the thing that Julie just talked about on YouTube with the playlist management. So as we actually hold these meetings, putting them into the relevant playlist or sort of section on our YouTube channel. And then finally, the operational notes. The only thing that we had here was that our board meetings are at 12 p.m. Pacific on Fridays. And that's a recap.
Thank you very much. I have a question, because the currencies, are they not meant to be translated into some sort of coins, like all of them? I was wondering how, for example, as in the last one, the other currency, this talks explicitly about earning coins or tokens for doing something. But the first mission metrics, they are metrics, but they are not translated into tokens. I think
what we don't
those
quite
are
know
still
how
just
that
like, those are vague ideas, right? Like here's things that we're going to suggest, and then so for this and for the jurisdiction, those aren't actually things that we aren't saying that these are them. These are like ideas that we're then going to discuss with Raymond, sort of put it in context of how this document is usually structured.
Cool.
But I think that's an area where a lot of us are sort of confused. It's like the three different currency types.
metrics that could be used to say, are we accomplishing our mission? And then we've talked about gamification and addiction and how we kind of want to do that for the currency itself. And since we're more purpose than profit driven, we'll figure it out. We'll own it. We'll be part of it and be like, wait, is this a little too addictive? Is it not addictive enough? Let's get that dopamine flowing.
Cool.
All right. We're at 1 p.m. We'll say goodbye to YouTube. We will see you next week, hopefully with Raymond, so we can finish the foundational documents. Or we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Bye-bye, YouTube.
Bye.
Oh, wait. Before we go, there's not a roundtable tomorrow, nor will there be one until the new year. And at which point we will do project related. Someone will sign up for the hot seat.